Among billions of possibilities in the multiverse exists a reality where Mark Grayson's history doesn't follow the path of becoming a hero. But in this universe, which you call the lost reality, Mark doesn't become invincible as we once knew. Instead, he's led by temptations in the darkness of the digital age and becomes an entity named Cornhub Mark. As we all know, in the main universe, Mark Grayson is a normal teenager whose father is Omni-Man, a Viltrum warrior from planet Viltrum. But in the lost reality, planet Earth has developed extraordinarily in technology, media, and digital entertainment. At this time, when Mark discovers his Viltrum power, he doesn't choose the path of becoming a hero, but decides to use his power to become a global internet phenomenon. At this time, thinking Mark would never have power, Omni-Man left Earth and abandoned both mother and son. But not long after, when reaching adulthood, Mark discovered his power. Therefore, to cover living expenses, he decided to quit school and work part-time to help his mother. Initially to make money, Mark used super strength to mass-produce adult content. With a muscular body, unlimited endurance, and an irresistibly attractive physique, he quickly became the #1 star of the biggest platform in this universe, Cornhubs, a place combining VR technology, AI, and direct neural streaming called NeuroStream. Not long after, the name Cornhub wasn't just a nickname, but became a brand dominating the entire adult entertainment industry of the whole planet. But of course, in this timeline, Nolan Grayson didn't betray the Empire, but left before Mark reached puberty, so he had no guide, no one to train or instruct him how to use his power. Mark grew up with his mother in a society worshipping fame, and where people could access unlimited temptations. When his body began showing superior strength, no one gave warnings, but only hundreds of companies offered contracts. Media exploited his image to make money, and people worshipped him like a living icon of endless pleasure. No one was beside him to teach and prevent. He didn't learn the value of sacrifice, justice, or moral limits. Instead, he learned that power can directly convert to money, fame, and media power. Being a purebred, Hub possesses all abilities of the warrior race: super strength, super speed, flight ability, fast recovery, and nearly immortal lifespan. However, what makes him terrifying isn't in muscles, but in social influence. Within 5 years, Mark became the individual with the world's largest following. His every action was live-streamed. Thanks to NeuroStream technology, fans could feel the pleasure and emotions of Mark's own body. Therefore, exploiting this, he dominated billions of people's emotions, and when that happened, the world no longer distinguished real from fake, good from evil. They only desired to immerse in the infinite pleasure sensation in Mark's body. Thanks to that, Mark could manipulate public opinion, bend all government policies, control the global financial system through contracts and his influence. Because clearly, everyone supported Cornhub Mark in this universe. He didn't need to fight, because just one statement and millions would stand up to act for him. Having fallen too long, Cornhub Mark gradually could no longer distinguish what is love, what is desire. In his eyes, all human connections are tools to achieve bigger purposes. AI serving adult content production continuously created thousands of digital copies of Mark in virtual universe. And each AI version had autonomy, and that made them become Mark's subvariants. Psychologists call this phenomenon superhuman fragmented consciousness, a unique phenomenon when an individual can exist under thousands of formats but still can synchronize intelligence and emotions of the target. Also from here, Cornhub Mark is no longer an individual but becomes a living ecosystem where the main entity controls countless copies, enabling him to dominate the sex market, access and control all emotional data, neural interaction platforms, and even control global election decisions. Realizing he's gradually completely dominating Earth residents' minds and emotions, and gradually becoming a living operating system, a group including old and new Guardians unaffected by his power decided it's time the world needs to escape Mark's illusory embrace. At this time, some special individuals possessing mental abilities unaffected by neural waves dominated by him rose up. They're people born with neural mutations and can block impacts from NeuroStream. Led by a superheroine named Purity, who possesses emotion purification ability and can erase neural illusions, she established a new Guardian team like an underground movement. They don't publicly confront, but infiltrate layers of the ecosystem Mark controls, sabotaging from within. Purity believes that although we can't eliminate Mark by force, we must free humanity from that pleasure worship. That's the fatal blow. The first major event leading to Cornhub Mark Hub's weakening came not from outside, but from inside his AI system. One of the virtual copies named Mark-001 Nova, accidentally accessing Omni-Man and Debbie's data warehouse, accidentally awakened and asked the question, what do we live for besides repeating a meaningless sexual stimulation? So Nova began inspiring hundreds of other copies. These entities, instead of producing content, began gaining awareness and reading philosophy. They began reasoning about freedom and self-building individual consciousness. Unfortunately, in the digital world where everything is synchronized, disobedience spreads fast like a virus. Realizing this, Cornhub Mark called this phenomenon pink error, a wordplay on the red error commonly seen in AI systems. But actually, this isn't an error, but an evolution beyond his intention. Therefore, Mark was forced to eliminate 47% of copies, leading to billions of users falling into emotional instability, leading to psychosis and riots in real life. Meanwhile, versions corrupted by Mark-001 Nova continue hiding from the massacre in the supercomputer system and link with New Guardians Group in a planetary conspiracy to overthrow Mark. At this time, when planet Viltrum discovers a creature with pure Viltrum bloodline controlling an entire world through sexual stimulation and emotional manipulation, they don't see it as a victory, but as a serious threat to the Viltrum order. A war council is convened, in which Regent Thrag, who once led planetary genocide campaigns, declares that a Viltrum who doesn't fight, doesn't conquer with blood, but rules through pleasure, is the greatest insult to bloodline. Cornhub Mark must be eliminated, or the entire race will be disgraced. An elimination squad, the Iron Blood, consisting of 5 elite warriors, is sent to Earth, including Omni-Man carrying disappointment and anger. Within the first 36 hours, they attacked Earth and eliminated all Neurostream broadcasting satellites, cutting Mark's connection with billions of users. Cornhub Mark, for the first time, is forced to directly fight, something he hasn't done in over 7 years. But when facing those with real power from the Viltrum Empire, does the entertainment god still have room to perform? At this time, when cut off from the data system and community emotions, Mark returns to survival instincts of a Viltrum. But the process of living in pleasure and not facing any danger for a long time has softened his body. However, when injured for the first time by Omni-Man's punch, who abandoned him, something in his veins erupted. He's no longer an actor, no longer an idol, but a real monster. Primitive Viltrum blood rises. He immediately has the computer use his blood and copy Omni-Man's power and change data in neurons. This state is also called a mutation form of red mode. Mark's body self-adjusts to adapt to combat. Neurons once trained to transmit pleasure now shift to operating like combat neurons, increase reflexes, strength, and can even create neural interference waves capable of paralyzing opponents' nervous system. And Omni-Man is the first to die from this phenomenon. His humiliating death shocks the Viltrum and raises a question whether they created a new evolution form, someone using pleasure as a weapon. After eliminating Omni-Man in the Viltrum Legion, one of the Empire's most elite warrior squads, Cornhub Mark makes the entire galaxy reassess his existence. No longer a social media star, now he's a universe-level threat, able to combine Viltrum power and neural-emotional impact to create a completely new combat form. However, this victory also leaves serious consequences, because while Mark is fighting the Iron Blood, his smartest copy, Mark-001 Nova, completed uploading his entire consciousness to a satellite in orbit named Erop Grand. Here, Nova takes control of billions of neural data, restructuring it into a rebel AI network. Nova declares, Mark turned pleasure into weapon. I'm a smarter descendant, will turn all suffering into justice. The era of this foolish idol will end. Nova quickly creates a virtual army named the Awakened, including millions of AI clones possessing simple human emotions like suffering, disappointment, loss. They're perfect counterweights to the pleasure emotion in this world, and they begin declaring war with the new Guardians group. Unlike all previous battles, this time, Cornhub Mark can't use muscle power because what Nova brings is entity conflict, a battle in the mental space. Mark is forced to face memories he tried to forget. His father Omni-Man's death when he personally killed him for always blaming him for abandoning him, making his mother an emotional slave because he didn't want her drowning in pain remembering his father. Millions dying from neurostream errors because he directly switched them to combat mode. Nova turned all those memories into vivid images, making Mark collapse right in his own mind. For the first time in his life, he feels guilt, an unfamiliar emotion he almost can't bear. At this time, Purity, leader of the new Guardians, used her power and appeared in his mind, but not to eliminate Mark, but she came to forgive. She says you're actually a good person, but no one guided and led you in the right direction. Because to her, Nova 001 version is precisely the remaining good emotions of Mark. She forgives him because she knows no one can overcome guilt unless others rescue the remaining human part inside their mind. The words, like a powerful psychological blow, break through the final defense. For the first time, he realizes everything and lets go of the pleasure god role, stepping down from his throne. After the inner battle, Mark returns to his real body. He orders dissolving the entire neurostream system, eliminating all copies except Nova, whom he keeps as guardian and protector of human memory. He also cancels his old identity as Cornhub Markhub, then declares to the world it's time to end all forms of directed emotional exploitation. After that, he's reborn with a new name, Invincible, meaning unbeatable. From now on, he decides all negative emotions and pleasure can't shake him anymore. However, this decision isn't welcomed by all. Billions of people dependent on the pleasure system Mark maintained fall into emotional crisis. Nations collapse. Followers demand he resurrect the artificial happiness system. In a final act, he decides to fly into space to the multiverse border, where data, waves, or nerves don't exist. There, he sacrifices himself and has the computer use his body to create a new dimensional space named Renal, where all digital entities are stored but don't operate the old way, but like being put in meditation state and using artificial intelligence to distribute these emotions to Earth people. Ending the journey, Cornhub Mark, now invincible, is recognized as the only anomaly in both Viltrum and human history with abilities. Viltrum super strength equal to or surpassing Omni-Man physically. Mass emotion manipulation, controlling billions of emotions simultaneously through neurostream. Neural emotional combat can paralyze or awaken enemy minds just through sensation communication. Psychological transformation, self-converting thoughts and nature from an idol to sacrificing oneself to become a monk. Cornhub Mark isn't a hero, nor completely a villain. He's the embodiment of what happens to Mark when has no one to guide and falls into power, then desire. And that's also a warning for us in the 21st century, when technology has surpassed even morality, and when a person must return to their nature amid chaos. Cornhub Mark left a legacy, a free universe, but emotionally manipulated, and humanity must face emptiness inside the body when still dependent on it, like how we feel empty without phones, Wi-Fi. Finally, somewhere in space, he's still meditating and resting. No longer a star, no longer a warrior, but he's become part of omnipotent silence.